She offered coffee to a homeless man, but what he said next revealed her own father's past. Asterisk. The December morning was bitter cold in downtown Chicago, with snow falling steadily and the wind cutting through even the heaviest winter coats. Emma Rodriguez hurried down Michigan Avenue toward her office at the marketing firm, where she worked as a senior account manager, clutching her steaming coffee cup like a lifeline against the freezing temperature. At 28, Emma had built a successful career and comfortable life for herself, but she had never forgotten the lessons her father had taught her about compassion and helping others. Miguel Rodriguez had raised Emma and her younger brother as a single parent after their mother died when Emma was 12, and he had always emphasized the importance of treating everyone with dignity and kindness. As Emma approached the entrance to her office building, she noticed a homeless man sitting in the doorway of a closed shop across the street. He was elderly, probably in his 70s, with silver hair visible beneath a worn knit cap. Despite the heavy coat he wore, Emma could see that he was shivering violently in the cold, and her heart went out to him. Without hesitation, Emma crossed the street and approached the man. "Excuse me," she said gently. "It's freezing out here. Would you like some hot coffee? There's a cafe right around the corner." The man looked up at her with surprised, watery blue eyes. "That's very kind of you, miss, but I don't want to be any trouble." "It's no trouble at all," Emma insisted. "I'm Emma, and I can't stand the thought of anyone being this cold. Please, let me get you something warm to drink." The man's face softened. With gratitude, "I'm Harold," he said quietly. "Harold Martinez. And yes, I would be very grateful for some coffee." Emma helped Harold to his feet and guided him to the nearby cafe, where she ordered 2 large coffees and a breakfast sandwich. For Harold, as they sat at a small table near the window, Emma noticed that despite his circumstances, Harold carried himself with a quiet dignity that reminded her of someone, though she couldn't place who. "Thank you for your kindness," Harold said, wrapping his hands around the warm coffee cup. "It's been a long time since someone showed me such consideration." "Everyone deserves to be treated with respect," Emma replied, echoing words her father had often said. "How long have you been on the streets?" Harold's expression grew sad. "About 2 years now. I lost my apartment when I couldn't work anymore, due to my health, and I don't have any family to help me." As Harold spoke, Emma found herself studying his face more closely. There was something familiar about his features, something that tugged at her memory in a way she couldn't explain. "Harold Martinez," Emma repeated thoughtfully. "That's an interesting coincidence. My father's name is Miguel Rodriguez, but our family name used to be Martinez before my grandfather changed it when he came to America." Harold's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips, and his eyes widened with shock. "Miguel Rodriguez," he whispered. "Your father's name is Miguel Rodriguez?" "Yes," Emma said, puzzled by Harold's intense reaction. "Do you know him?" Harold set down his coffee cup with shaking hands, staring at Emma as if he had seen a ghost. "What does your father look like? How old is he?" Emma was confused by the urgency in Harold's voice, but she answered anyway. "He's 55, about average height, dark hair that's starting to gray. He has a scar on his left hand from an accident when he was young." "Why do you ask?" Harold's face went completely white, and tears began streaming down his cheeks. "Emma," he said, his voice breaking, "I think Miguel Rodriguez is my son." Emma stared at Harold in complete shock, her mind struggling to process what he had just said. "That's impossible," she said finally. "My father's parents died when he was young. He was raised by his aunt and uncle." Harold wiped his eyes with a trembling hand. "Emma, what did your father tell you about his childhood, about his family?" "He said his parents died in a car accident when he was 8, and that he went to live with relatives who took care of him until he was old enough to be on his own," Emma replied, her voice uncertain as she began to question everything she thought she knew about her father's past. "That's not what happened," Harold said quietly. "Miguel's mother, my wife Carmen, did die in a car accident when Miguel was 8, but I didn't die. I was severely injured and spent months in the hospital. When I got out, Miguel was gone." Harold's story came out in broken pieces, interrupted by tears and long pauses as he struggled with painful memories. He explained that after the accident, he had been in a coma for several weeks, and when he woke up, he learned that his son had been placed with relatives because there was no one else to care for him. "I tried to get him back," Harold continued, "but I had brain injuries from the accident, and I couldn't work or take care of myself properly. The relatives convinced the court that Miguel was better off with them, and they eventually moved away. I spent years trying to find him, but they had changed his name, and I lost track of him completely." Emma felt her world spinning as she listened to Harold's story. "But why didn't my father know you were alive? Why didn't he try to find you?" "Because they told him I was dead," Harold said bitterly. "It was easier for them to raise him if he believed he had no other family. They probably thought they were doing what was best for him, but they stole 30 years of our lives together." Emma's mind raced as she tried to reconcile Harold's story with what she knew about her father's childhood. Miguel had always been somewhat vague about his early years, saying it was too painful to talk about losing his parents so young. Now Emma wondered if there were details he had never shared, or perhaps details he had never known. "Harold," Emma said carefully, "can't you prove that you're my father's father?" Do you have any documents or photographs? Harold reached into his worn backpack and pulled out a small, battered envelope. Inside were a few old photographs and documents that he had managed to keep through years of homelessness. The photographs showed a young man who looked remarkably like Emma's father, standing next to a woman and holding a small boy. "This is Miguel when he was 7, Harold said, pointing to the child in the photograph. "And this is Carmen, my wife, his mother. This was taken about 6 months before the accident." Emma studied the photographs with growing amazement. The resemblance between the young man in the picture and her father was unmistakable. The little boy had the same eyes, the same smile that she recognized from her father's childhood photos. "There's something else," Harold said, showing Emma an old birth certificate. "Miguel has a birthmark on his shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon. Carmen used to say it looked like he was marked by the angels." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her father did indeed have a crescent-shaped birthmark on his left shoulder, something she had seen countless times growing up, but had never thought much about. "Oh my God," Emma whispered. "You really are his father. You're my grandfather." Harold nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I've been looking for Miguel for 30 years. I never stopped hoping that someday I would find him, or that he would find me." Emma felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had discovered. In offering coffee to a homeless man, she had found her father's lost parent, a grandfather she had never known existed. "Harold," Emma said, her voice shaking with emotion, "my father thinks you're dead. He's grieved for you his entire adult life. When I tell him you're alive, it's going to change everything." "Will you tell him?" Harold asked hopefully. "Will you help me see my son again?" Emma reached across the table and took Harold's weathered hand in hers. "Of course I will. But first, we need to get you off the streets and into proper housing. My father would never forgive me if I let his father spend another night homeless." Emma called in sick to work that day, something she had never done for personal reasons, but finding her grandfather took priority over everything else. She spent the morning helping Harold gather his few belongings and checking him into a modest hotel room where he could shower, rest, and prepare for the reunion with his son. "I can't believe this is really happening," Harold said as he looked around the clean, warm hotel room. "For 2 years I've been sleeping in doorways and shelters, and now suddenly I have a granddaughter taking care of me." Emma was still processing the emotional impact of the discovery herself. "Harold, can I call you Grandpa? I've never had grandparents before." Harold's eyes filled with tears again. "I would be honored if you called me Grandpa. I've missed so much of your life, so much of Miguel's life. I don't even know if he got married, if he has other children, what kind of man he became." Emma spent the afternoon telling Harold about her father's life, how he had worked multiple jobs to support Emma and her brother after their mother died, how he had sacrificed his own dreams to make sure his children had opportunities, how he had become a respected member of their community despite the challenges he had faced. "He sounds like a good man," Harold said with pride. "Carmen would be so proud of the father he became." "He is a good man," Emma confirmed. "He taught me to be kind to others, to help people who are struggling. If he hadn't raised me that way, I might never have stopped to help you this morning." Emma was nervous about how to tell her father about Harold. Miguel had built his life on the belief that both his parents were dead, and learning that his father was alive and had been homeless would be an enormous shock. "I think I should prepare him gradually," Emma told Harold. "Maybe start by asking him more about his childhood, see what he actually remembers versus what he was told." That evening, Emma visited her father at his small apartment on the south side of Chicago. Miguel was a maintenance supervisor for the city, and he lived simply but comfortably in the same neighborhood where he had raised his children. "Emma, what a nice surprise," Miguel said, hugging his daughter warmly. "What brings you by on a weeknight, Dad?" "I wanted to ask you something about your childhood," Emma began carefully. "You've never talked much about your parents or what happened to them." Miguel's expression grew somber. "You know the story, Mia. They died in a car accident when I was 8. It's not something I like to think about." "But what do you actually remember about them?" Emma pressed gently. "Do you remember what they looked like, what they were like as people?" Miguel was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking back to memories he rarely accessed. "I remember my mother, Carmen. She was beautiful and kind, and she used to sing to me in Spanish. My father, I remember less about him. He was tall, I think, and he had gentle hands. But it's all very fuzzy." "Dad, what if I told you that there might be more to the story than what you were told as a child?" Miguel looked at his daughter with concern. "What do you mean, Emma? What's going on?" Emma took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to say would change her father's life forever. "Dad, I met someone today, a homeless man named Harold Martinez. He told me a story about losing his son after his wife died in a car accident 30 years ago. Miguel's face went pale. "Emma, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I think Harold Martinez is your father. I think he's been alive all these years, and the relatives who raised you told you he was dead." Miguel staggered backward, gripping the back of a chair for support. "That's impossible. My father died in the same accident as my mother. I was always told." Emma showed her father the photographs that Harold had shared with her, watching as recognition dawned in Miguel's eyes. The resemblance between Harold and Miguel was unmistakable, and the pictures of young Miguel were clearly authentic. "This is me," Miguel whispered, staring at the childhood photograph. "I remember this picture being taken, but how? Where did you get this?" "From Harold, Dad. He's been looking for you for 30 years. He never stopped hoping he would find you." Miguel sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. "My father is alive. He's been alive all this time." "Yes, and Dad, he needs our help. He's been homeless for 2 years, living on the streets. When I found him this morning, he was freezing in a doorway." Miguel's shock quickly turned to determination. "Where is he? I need to see him right now." The reunion between Miguel and Harold took place in the hotel room where Emma had arranged for Harold to stay. When Miguel first saw his father, both men stood frozen for a moment, staring at each other across 30 years of separation and grief. "Miguel," Harold said tentatively, as if he couldn't quite believe his son was really standing in front of him. "Papa," Miguel replied, using the Spanish word for father that he hadn't spoken since childhood. Then they were in each other's arms, both crying as they held each other for the first time in 3 decades. Emma watched from the doorway, tears streaming down her own face as she witnessed the reunion she had made possible. "I thought you were dead," Miguel sobbed. "They told me you died in the accident with Mama. I've grieved for you my whole life." "I know, mijo," Harold replied, using the Spanish endearment for my son. "They thought they were doing what was best for you, but they were wrong. I never stopped looking for you." For hours, father and son sat together, sharing the stories of their separate lives and trying to fill in 30 years of missing time. Harold learned about Miguel's struggles as a young single father, his dedication to his children, and his successful career despite the challenges he had faced. Miguel learned about Harold's years of searching, his gradual decline into poverty and homelessness, and his never-ending hope that someday they would be reunited. "I can't believe you've been living on the streets," Miguel said, his voice filled with anguish. "If I had known you were alive, I would have found you. I would have taken care of you." "You didn't know," Harold said gently, "and you were busy, raising your own family, being the good father that I always knew you would become." Miguel was determined to make up for lost time. "Papa, you're never going to be homeless again. You're going to come live with me, and we're going to be a family again." Harold was overwhelmed by his son's generosity. "Miguel, I don't want to be a burden. I'm old. I have health problems. I don't have anything to contribute." "You're not a burden," Miguel said firmly. "You're my father, and I've missed you every day for 30 years. Having you in my life is all I want." Emma watched as her father and grandfather planned their future together, feeling a deep satisfaction at having been the catalyst for their reunion. But she also realized that Harold's story raised important questions about how many other families had been separated by well-meaning but misguided decisions. "Grandpa," Emma said, "how many other people are out there who have lost touch with their families? How many homeless people are someone's missing parent or child?" Harold considered her question seriously. "More than you might think, Mia. When people become homeless, they often lose contact with everyone they knew. Families assume they're dead or don't want to be found, and the homeless person assumes their family has moved on without them." This conversation sparked an idea in Emma's mind. What if we created a program to help reunite homeless people with their families? A way to search for missing relatives and rebuild broken connections. Miguel was immediately interested in the idea. "Emma, that's brilliant. How many families could we help bring back together?" Over the following weeks, as Harold settled into Miguel's apartment and began rebuilding his relationship with his son, Emma researched the feasibility of creating a family reunification program for homeless individuals. She discovered that while some organizations offered similar services, there was a significant gap in resources dedicated specifically to this issue. "I want to start a nonprofit," Emma announced during one of their family dinners. "The Harold Martinez Foundation for Family Reunification will help homeless people search for their families and help families search for missing relatives." Harold was deeply moved by Emma's proposal. "You want to name it after me? You're the inspiration," Emma explained. "Your story shows that families can be reunited even after decades of separation, and that everyone deserves to have connections with the people who love them." Miguel offered to help with the foundation, using his connections in the city government to navigate the bureaucratic requirements for starting a nonprofit organization. Harold, despite his age and health challenges, insisted on being involved as well. "I want to share my story with other homeless people," Harold said. "I want them to know that it's never too late to reconnect with family, and that there are people who care about helping them find their way home." 6 months after Emma first offered coffee to Harold, the Harold Martinez Foundation for Family Reunification had helped reunite 12 homeless individuals with their families. Each success story reinforced Emma's belief that many people living on the streets had connections they didn't know existed or had given up hope of reestablishing. The foundation's first major success involved a homeless woman named Sarah who had been living in Chicago shelters for 3 years. Through the foundation's search process, they discovered that Sarah's sister in Denver had been looking for her for 5 years. Ever since Sarah had disappeared during a mental health crisis. "I thought she was dead," Sarah's sister cried during their emotional phone reunion. "I never stopped hoping, but I didn't know how to find her." Harold had become the foundation's most effective advocate, sharing his story at homeless shelters, community centers, and social service organizations throughout the city. His message was simple but powerful. Everyone deserves to have family connections, and it's never too late to rebuild relationships that have been broken by circumstances. When I was sitting in that doorway, freezing and alone, I had given up hope that I would ever see my son again, Harold would tell audiences. But my granddaughter saw me as more than just a homeless man. She saw me as someone's family member. That recognition changed everything. Miguel had taken early retirement from his city job to work full-time with the foundation, using his organizational skills and community connections to expand their reach. Father and son had developed a close working relationship that helped heal the decades of separation they had endured. Working together on this foundation has given us a way to rebuild our relationship while helping other families do the same, Miguel explained to a local newspaper reporter who was writing about their work. Emma had also made significant changes in her life, leaving her marketing job to focus entirely on the foundation. The work was more fulfilling than anything she had ever done, and she felt like she was honoring the values her father had instilled in her. Every family we reunite reminds me of that morning when I met Grandpa, Emma said. It shows me that small acts of kindness can have enormous consequences that we never expect. The foundation had also begun working with other organizations to address the broader issues that contributed to family separation among homeless populations. They partnered with mental health services, addiction treatment programs, and job training organizations to provide comprehensive support for people trying to rebuild their lives. Reuniting families is just the first step, Harold explained during a foundation board meeting. People also need support to maintain those relationships and address the underlying issues that led to their homelessness. One of the foundation's most innovative programs involved training volunteers to conduct family searches using social media, public records, and other online resources. Many families had been separated for years simply because they didn't know how to find each other. In an increasingly mobile society, technology has made it easier than ever to locate missing family members, Emma explained to new volunteers. But it requires patience, creativity, and a willingness to follow every possible lead. The foundation had also established a hotline for families searching for missing relatives and for homeless individuals who wanted help reconnecting with their families. The hotline was staffed by volunteers who had been trained in family search techniques and crisis counseling. Sometimes people call us in the middle of the night because they've been thinking about a missing family member and suddenly feel ready to start searching, Miguel explained. We want to be available whenever someone is ready to take that step. Harold's health had improved significantly since moving in with Miguel and receiving proper medical care. The stress and poor nutrition of homelessness had taken a toll on his body, but with treatment and care, he had regained much of his strength and vitality. Having my family back has been better medicine than anything the doctors could prescribe, Harold often said. Love and connection are the most powerful healing forces in the world. 2 years after their first meeting, Emma and Harold stood together at a podium in the Chicago City Council chambers, preparing to receive a Community Service Award for the Harold Martinez Foundation's work in family reunification. The foundation had grown to serve clients throughout the Midwest and had helped reunite over 150 families. When I offered coffee to a homeless man on a cold December morning, I thought I was just being kind to a stranger, Emma said in her acceptance speech. I had no idea that I was about to discover my own grandfather and start a movement that would help hundreds of families find each other again. Harold, now 73 but looking healthier and more vibrant than he had in years, spoke about the importance of seeing homeless individuals as complete human beings with histories, families, and stories worth preserving. Every person living on the streets is someone's child, parent, sibling, or friend, Harold said. They may have lost their homes, but they haven't lost their capacity to love and be loved. Our job is to help them remember that they still belong to someone, somewhere. Miguel watched from the audience with pride as his father and daughter received recognition for their work. The foundation had not only reunited countless families but had also given his own family a sense of purpose and mission that strengthened their bonds. After the ceremony, the 3 generations of the Martinez-Rodriguez family returned to Miguel's apartment, which had become the unofficial headquarters for their foundation work. The walls were covered with photographs of reunited families, thank you letters from grateful relatives, and newspaper clippings documenting their success stories. You know what I've learned from all this? Emma said as they sat together in Miguel's living room, surrounded by the evidence of their work. I've learned that family isn't just about blood relationships. It's about choosing to care for each other, to search for each other when we're lost, and to never give up hope that love can overcome any obstacle. Harold nodded, thinking about all the families they had helped bring back together. I've also learned that sometimes the people who appear to have lost everything are actually the ones who have the most to teach us about resilience, hope, and the power of human connection. Miguel reflected on how much his life had changed since Emma had walked into his apartment with the news that his father was alive. I spent 30 years grieving for a father I thought was dead, and now I have him back. But more than that, I have a purpose that connects me to something bigger than myself. The foundation continued to grow and evolve, developing new programs and partnerships that addressed the complex issues surrounding homelessness and family separation. They had established satellite offices in 3 other cities and were training other organizations to replicate their model. Our goal isn't just to help individual families, Emma explained to potential funders and partners. Our goal is to change how society thinks about homeless people, to help everyone understand that these are our neighbors, our community members, our family members who need support and connection, not judgment and isolation. Harold had also become a sought-after speaker at conferences and events focused on homelessness and social services. His story resonated with audiences because it challenged assumptions about who becomes homeless and why. I was a working man with a family and a home, Harold would tell audiences. I became homeless because of circumstances beyond my control, injury, illness, and a system that failed to keep families together. That could happen to anyone, and when it does, those people need compassion and support, not judgment and abandonment. As the evening wound down, Emma looked round at her father and grandfather, marveling at how a simple act of kindness had transformed all their lives. The homeless man she had offered coffee to had turned out to be the missing piece of her family puzzle, and their reunion had sparked a movement that was helping families across the country find each other again. I think about that morning all the time, Emma said. What if I had been in too much of a hurry to stop? What if I had just walked past like everyone else did? We might never have found each other. But you didn't walk past, Harold said with a smile. You stopped, you saw me as a human being worth helping, and you changed everything. That's the power of compassion. You never know how far the ripples will spread. Their story reminds us that everyone we encounter has a history, a family, and a story that we may never fully understand. It shows us that small acts of kindness can have consequences far beyond what we imagine, and that sometimes the people who appear to need our help the most are actually the ones who have the most to give us in return. Most importantly, it proves that family connections can survive even the most devastating separations, that love transcends circumstances, and that it's never too late to find your way home to the people who matter most. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of compassion and the importance of family connections, please subscribe to our channel. We share stories of hope, reunion, and the incredible ways that ordinary acts of kindness can reveal extraordinary truths and transform lives forever. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of people who believe that everyone deserves to be seen, valued, and connected to the love that makes life meaningful.